Are we still there? I hope I didn't lose anybody.
No, I'm totally. No, I didn't want to interrupt you. And the gentleman that you helped, I wanted to touch on this point one more time because time is just flying by. And
right.
How many people you bought him to 10? Explain, not too detailed, but explain why you gave him 10, what his whole plan was, maybe more in detail so people can, reevaluate their plan and go, okay, I'm similar to that, or I need to, get this. I like how you explained the parts that people need to have because, it's essential. A lot of people will have a 55-gallon drum, and then they'll be like, well, I'll just get the water, I'll tip it over. And it's just not going to work like that. It's going to weigh 8 times 55,
it's over
for 440 pounds. It's not that easy to just tip it over. So go ahead, Dave.
Right.
And I want to get more detail on his specific situation. Go ahead.
Okay, his situation. So specifically, he has, his wife and they live on their property that they have, and he primarily was concerned he has 5 kids. Now, 3 of his children don't live in the state, so they live in a different, complete area, and I know that he's not really worried in the sense of if something locally happens here that they're not going to have water. But he does have 2 of his children locally here within a couple of surrounding counties, and he was thinking, well, if my wife and I don't have water, something happens, and we have 250 gallons, a little bit over 250 gallons, 275 gallons here at our house, and then at work, because he's at work so often, he's not at work, he's at his house. If they have 200-something gallons between the both of them, that's going to keep both of them alive for quite a few days as far as drinking water goes. So simply, if you want to do the math, here's what you do. You simply go in and say, okay, if I want to prepare and have the bare minimum, which is 1 gallon of water per person per day, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, now he was particularly concerned about it having a 90-day supply for him and his wife. So what he did is he said, if we're consuming 2 gallons of water per day, okay, for both of us, how many days would that keep us alive? Okay? So he got 2, and he multiplied that times 90. The 2 being a gallon for my wife, a gallon for me per day, and I want to have 90 days worth of storage. That's going to give me 180 gallons of water for 90 days. Minimum survival, okay? We're not talking about, going and cooking a beautiful 5-entree Mountain House dinner out of the bags. We're talking about minimal survival here. That's 180 gallons, okay? And that is about 3 water barrel containers, 3 55-gallon containers, okay? Mm-hmm. So when we do that math, we have 165 gallons. He wasn't too concerned about going over, under, allowances, a few gallons, but that was a minimum that he wanted to have 3 containers at the house. So he went ahead and got 5. But he also was concerned at his work because he has access to his work. So he has his kids nearby. One of his sons lives nearby his office in Orange County. So he was concerned because his son has, I think, 2 or 3 kids. So looking at those numbers, that 180 gallons is going to supply him and his wife for water for 180 days, but you know that he's going to do what he can to get to both of his sons, and they both have families. But this was the first point for him to actually get himself set up, and he can go to his sons and say, hey, I set this up for ourselves. You guys need to look at this. And, of course, I'm giving them a deal because, he's giving some great referrals. But he's thinking seriously about it. So you want to look at, if you're going to look at 3 days per person, a family of 5, okay? So you would do a gallon per person for a family of 5 for 3 days. Okay, so you have 5 gallons a day times 3 days. That's going to be 15 gallons. Okay, 15 gallons of water to drink and to, wash your face and stuff. So that's a simple formula. If I have, like my family, I have 4 people in my family, okay, and I wanted to get 90 days of water, so that's 4 gallons a day for my family per person, 1 gallon per person times 90 days. That gives me 360 gallons of water that I need to have. So I actually have 10 containers, so I have way over what I need. But that's also. I want to make
that point. Like, you can go above and beyond. I know people in the chat room have been saying how much they have, and I'm glad they do. But also maybe reevaluate maybe a little evaluation that needs to be done on all of our water preps is like how much
right.
how much do we have? And say we have, like you were saying, you have 4 in your family, so 4 times 90 is 360. So you'd only have about 6.5 of them, but you actually have 10. So
Here's
that's
why.
good. You've got extra.
Here's why, okay? Very, very important point. You bring up some excellent points, and time does go by really fast. The other day when you told me time goes by, I'm like, wow. So let me slow down because I speak a little fast when I get excited.
No, and we only have a few minutes left, so I want to touch up on one other question, but go ahead.
Sure.
Touch up on at least one other
question.
Well,
real briefly, the reason why I have so much extra water is because we're expecting another baby, okay? And just because of my line of work, when illness happens, when a catastrophe happens and you have particles floating up in the air, when you have water that's stagnant, because we know that if water pipes break, water's going to go somewhere. It's going to pool. You have mosquitoes. So I'm very, very concerned about hygiene, and I want to have enough. I know that there's going to be animals roaming around because people, are going to have, they say, oh, let's get rid of our animal. We don't have, that's one less mouth that we have to hydrate. So if you have extra animals and you have your pets, you want to keep them hydrated, you want to keep them clean and stuff. If you want to make sure that your waste, your human waste, can be flushed down the toilet, remember you can use your toilet as long as it's not broken in half and it seems to be working properly. You don't have to have positive pressure in from a main water line. You can use a bucket or container to actually flush and simply use the pressure gradient to flush the material, the waste material down. But if you're out there and you're actually having to use the latrine in your backyard, then you are definitely going to have some extra water on hand to be able to maintain proper hygiene. So that's why I have the extra buffer. Like you said, always want to have those things in mind. But what's the other question you had?
No, and just you can get into the last point. We have about 5 minutes left. And what I would say is that one last thing that I was thinking about, my aunt, this reminds me of my aunt who lives in Utah. She was relaying the story that she has a 55-gallon drum that's been sitting in her house for 30 years. And she has this mindset, or at least, maybe it doesn't that, maybe 20 years. It was between 20 and 30 years. And I'm like, the mindset of people is that sometimes, not everybody, and I don't want to sound like my life is perfect or I look at her, under a microscope, but a lot in your preps, one thing you need to think about is that how long will the water be able to store there? And also, and then will it even be drinkable after a certain time? How do you make it last longer? I only have a few minutes left, but, what do we do with that water? What is your recommendations for people once they have the water in there? And say it's been in there for, a year or longer. What is your recommendations to help it last
Excellent
longer?
point.
To make
Excellent point.
It's not going to be drinkable. Go ahead. I shouldn't talk for you.
First of all, you bring up a really good point. Pools. This gentleman has a huge pool. And guess what? He can't drink that water in his pool. You shouldn't be drinking it. I don't care if you boil the pool. I don't care if you put it through a Berkey. I don't care if you put it through, unless you have a reverse osmosis system or some kind of complex, chemist thing in your garage, that's really impractical. So use that water in a pool, for example, for cleaning your body, bathing, those kind of things, okay? Secondly, if you have water that's been sitting in your container and it has been exposed to the sun at all, I don't care if you have one of my containers that's UV rated, that's food grade rated, it's blue or it's dark or, whatever, it's opaque to be able to resist the sunlight, it doesn't matter. You need to be maintaining the water and make sure it has a chemical, and I go by water preserver concentrate, okay? I'm a distributor for them. There's a reason, because I believe in their product and I've seen it work. I've seen the difference. That, if your water's stored properly, it's a service that I provide, it's been tested for up to 5 years. That's the EPA said we can give you this sealed fluor for 5 years. It's been found at 10 to be safe, but I change my water, and I have my customers change their water every 6 to 12 months. Water's not staying in there longer than that, okay? If your water's been in there longer than that and it's been exposed to the sun at all, get rid of it, and you have to clean the inside of the container out. Very difficult to do because these HDPE containers, high-density polyethylene containers, they're going to absorb whatever kind of chemical you have in there, which is another reason why we didn't mention this, but don't buy into the myth that you're going to save all this money because you're buying a food-grade container that's been washed out and cleaned, cleansed, and certified. Any chemicals that were in there are absorbed in the plastic, and you're not going to get out with steam. You're not going to get out with all this other stuff. So again, it's not so I can sell more containers. That's the reality. I don't want anything that's a chemical issue to be an issue in my water because it's going to get leached back into the water. So those are some points. When I go up to Utah with my family, we go take a vacation, I'd be happy to help her out and switch out her water for her.
No, you said 1 year. I know you talked about water preservers a little bit. Do you recommend? How do you recommend that intertwining with the 1 year or these water preservers that you're talking about? Can you store water longer than 1 year? I know that James Dalmatian talked about it, but go ahead.
Yes, you can. You can. But I'll tell you this right here. A lot of literature out there, and what people seem to be referencing other people on, and agencies, is that, real briefly, because cities chlorinate water, you should be, okay, I heard that indicator, you should be able to store it. That's not true. Personal experience. I stored water here for 6 months in a container that was rated. I had algae on the bottom of it. And that was apparently, this place is over-chlorinated, the municipality, the service that does it. So, water preserver concentrate, excellent product. But you can, anyways, we'll have to put some more information on the blog. I'll make some more videos. We'll update some stuff here. But yeah, if you do use water preserver concentrate, but even then, you want to check your water to make sure it's safe every few months. It's not worth it to say, I have water stored away, it's going to be fine there. The sort of, So, we'll have to talk in the future about how emergencies affect us. They affect our time and they affect our resources. But we can eliminate fear from preparation and from emergencies. Because once we get rid of fear, we minimize fear out of the equation, guess what? An unexpected event, we can handle it better. And we can get rid of the panic, and we're able to think rationally, because when emergencies happen, our ability to rationally think just flies out the window. So
and I really appreciate you being on the show, and I want to give your website again. It's familysafewater.com. David, thanks a mil for coming on. This is the Berkey Guy Show. We're closing out the show for today. Our third show next week. We will have another show Tuesday night. My website is goberkey.com. And, Dave, I'm going to have you on again. So hopefully in November we'll have Dave on again to go into more detail. So this is the Berkey Guy Show. Good night to everyone. Bye-bye.